Now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, Tulaneans. We have this tutorial prepared especially for parents of Tulane students, but we also know that this information is vital to your students. So we encourage you to send this link to your student or sit down and watch it together and go over this information. My name is Penny Wyatt, and I'm the Director of Parent Programs, and I am very happy to present my colleague, Norris Yarborough, to present this information to you. And I'll let him introduce himself further and tell you a little bit more about his background and his all of his certifications and his role here at Tulane as he guides you through this important information about hurricane response.
Okay, thank you, Penny. Since we're trying to keep this good and short and to the point, I'm not going to bore you to death with a lot of credentials, but as Penny said, I am Norris Yarborough. I'm the Assistant Vice President for Emergency Preparedness and Response for Tulane University. I've been in the emergency preparedness and response field about 40 years. I've been here with Tulane about 5 years, but I've been in New Orleans 35 years, so this is nothing new to me. And I just want to take a few minutes to share some of our plans with you and some of the experience that I've accumulated in hurricane preparedness and severe weather over the last 35 years and impart that to you guys. So that's what I'm going to be doing over the next couple of minutes. Okay, I'm going to ask Penny to give me a little help advancing. All right, and this slide again, what I'll do is talk to you of each of the slides. This is just introducing our department. The Tulane Emergency Preparedness and Response Department consists of 3 people, and our sole function, our sole mission for Tulane University is to keep your students safe while they're here. Okay, in fact, here's our mission statement. I won't read it word for word for you, but this is something I put together just to try to pull our team's focus together and keep our crosshairs on the target of what we're here to do. A lot of times you get lost in some of that, but we're here to basically provide for the care, welfare, safety, and security of your students. Severe weather is the topic of this presentation. Severe weather and evacuation procedures are something that we take very seriously. We go over this with your students during orientation. There'll be other opportunities throughout the semester that will also be talking with your students through mailers, through advertisement, and we do a lot of face-to-face work with at the coffee shops where we know the students are and in the LBC, and we'll be meeting them and working with your students throughout the year. During a severe weather event, we'll keep your students updated and the staff via alerts that'll come through across their telephones as text messages and voice messages, as well as over the internet as a pop-up on their computers if they have their computers open. During times of severe weather, there may be times that we would request the students to shelter in place and not travel to classes. That comes up more in the case of severe lightning warnings that we have that'll pop up here from time to time, or in particular tornado warnings. During severe weather, we're going to be focusing, when I say we, I'm talking about the Emergency Preparedness Department, we're focusing our communication with your student. They're our primary concern and responsibility during any type of severe weather emergency. And so we won't be communicating directly with the parents. However, I will be showing you in a couple of minutes how you can sign up for parent notification when we have those type of events going on. Leaving the school. When would we talk about leaving the school? Landfalling hurricanes that require an evacuation and the school closing are extremely rare. Now, I know that might not be what you've heard before. You hear of Louisiana and everyone automatically thinks of Katrina and doom and gloom, but that's not the case. We have not evacuated this campus since August of 2008, and that was Hurricane Gustav. So this is not something that occurs every year, and I don't want you to feel like your students coming into Hurricane Central. But we never know when it could occur, and that's why we prepare the way we do. Now, how do we make madness out of a hurricane approaching? This is a rather busy slide that you're looking at. I'm not going to talk all the way through it. This is something you can look at your leisure at another date. But I did want you to know there is a process we follow if we're monitoring a hurricane to get to the point where we decide we are either going to close the school or not. And we use what's called the timeline that you see in front of you. So when a hurricane's about a week away, and that's 7 days, and the weather services are beginning to predict we may be in the path of landfall, we're doing a little more in the emergency preparedness department other than communicating with our weather service and monitoring that event. We are the department that will direct the university's responses to hurricanes. We're the ones that will be sending out the communications to the students, and you'll be receiving those also from our marketing department. Now, as we get closer to landfall, if the hurricane continues to track our way, say it's 6 days before predicted landfall, we're still talking with our weather services, but now we're beginning to meet with our president's cabinet and some of the other preparedness partners throughout the city. We have an active role with New Orleans Homeland Security. We sit on that. So we're coordinating our responses with those, as well as with the governor's office of Homeland Security. So we're beginning to talk with those partners at day 6. As we move in closer, you get to 5 days before predicted landfall. We're just stepping up and ramping up our preparations. But the meat of decision begins to fall in here. When we get to the 4 or 3 days before landfall, that's when the weather service predictions on where and possibly when a hurricane is going to make landfall begin to increase in accuracy to the point we can make solid decisions here. When you're still at 765 days, that's when you see that track moving quite a bit when you're watching the weather channel and different weather sources. But at 4 to 3 days before predicted landfall, we're making the decision whether or not to close and evacuate the school. We're looking at pushing out closure information to our faculty and staff and the students via our email and websites and social media. This is when you'll be getting notifications from the university. We ramp up and start running transportation shuttles to the airport. This is how your students would get to the airport to get their flight if they're flying out. Our housing and student affairs work with students implementing their personal evacuation plans, and I'm going to speak to that for you in just a second. So now we're down to 2.5 to 2 days before predicted landfall. We're going to wrap up any school evacuation and closure acts that we need to do at that point. At the end of that second day or day 2 before landfall, all of our students should have completed their self-evacuation. If we've had a student that for some reason has been unable to self-evacuate, this is the point where we would be putting them on shuttles that we have contracted with, and we'll be sending those students off to UAB. But I'll caution you here and at other points, the evacuation of us, the university, taking students to UAB is strictly a fallback plan. It cannot and should not be your primary plan. In the event we decide to evacuate, just to kind of home in on this for you a little bit, you need to already be familiar with the hurricane plan. And if you go to the Tulane University webpage and search hurricane, you're going to come up to a link, Tulane Emergency Preparedness website. You want to click on that. On that, it's going to have all the different links to give you information that parents should know. If you share this link with your student, it's information that they'll know, although we'll be pushing it to them too. We're going to talk to you about things that you should have ready in advance. You don't want to wait till we've said we're closing the school to get these things together. You should already have, or your students should have already put together a go bag that's in their dorm room. And here's some contents that we've listed here: cash, telephone, contact numbers, things that you want to make sure are in that go bag. You can also go to our website and we've got a complete list of these items that you want to go in there. Transportation to the airport, as I mentioned, begins somewhere around 96 hours before landfall. We'll be running shuttles from the university to the airport. Your student will just need their boarding pass and their government issued ID, as well as their splash card. The splash card is required to get them onto our shuttle. And we'll run these continuously up until we have completed the evacuation of the school, which shuts down somewhere around 28 hours before landfall. Your student needs to check with their RA for any more specific information. So I'm giving you a broad brush here. We've got specific information printed up that your students can get from their RA when they get on campus here. Please note that students will not be allowed to use Tulane University or any of the Tulane University Health Campus Science building as a storm shelter. If we give an evacuation order, no student, no faculty, no staff are allowed to remain on campus in the event we're doing a university closure. And this is strictly for safety reasons. Hurricane evacuation planning, a couple of other things that I wanted to get in front of you here. It is mandatory that you develop a personal emergency plan with your student and submit it via Gibson Online before your student moves in the fall. If you go to Gibson Online, personal safety plan, you can click on it. I'm going to show you a slide in just a minute that'll show you what it looks like. But here's some of the questions you want to have already answered on a little piece of paper before you pull it up. And you're going to have to be with your student when you do this, because Gibson Online is a secure sign-in, and your student will have to have their student ID to sign in here. Well, here's the thing you want to know. Where is your student going to evacuate to? This is something that you want to work through with the student in advance, having the evacuation plan so that we know where they're going and they know where they're going. Rule of thumb here, when you're evacuating your students, you do not want to evacuate them to another coastal city or area along the coast, because then they come in danger of that storm changing direction and going where you've evacuated them to. So you always want to go inland, typically north. And as a rule of thumb, we suggest somewhere around 360 miles inland. As I mentioned before, you will need to know how your student is going to evacuate. Are they going to go out via airline? Are they going to go out via car? A lot of freshmen obviously won't have cars here. But after they've been here for a few weeks, a month or more, they meet students who do have cars. So you may initially have that they're going to fly out. They get a buddy that lives in Arkansas, and y'all decide they're going to ride with them. It's an upperclassman. They have a car, and so you may be going out by car. When will you make the decision? I'm going to give you a really big suggestion here. You make the decision to evacuate your student as soon as we say the school is closing. You know, now I'm putting them on the plane, I get the ticket, they print out their boarding pass at the school, they're ready to go. So you need to make the decision there. Okay? Students need to have their air travel, their printed boarding pass. The boarding pass, let me back up to that. I know you've heard me say that a couple of times. The printed boarding pass is necessary, or the e-ticket, either one is acceptable, because the airport during an evacuation for a hurricane goes into a security lockdown mode, so that when the students arrive on our shuttle, they have to present their boarding pass along with their government-issued ID. That's why I said they have to have their splash card and their government-issued ID. They have to have that government-issued ID and that e-pass or the boarding pass, printed boarding pass, in order to get into the concourse. This is the way the airport controls the pedestrian traffic within its building. So they need to really have those ready. This is a cue to you. You need to print those or purchase those tickets as soon as we begin to tell you that we're closing the school. When we do that, print the ticket. Don't wait, because you're going to run the risk of flights beginning to get tight, even though the airline will increase the number of flights going out during a hurricane evacuation. Once the city announces this evacuation, those tickets go quick. We time our announcement of closing the campus so that we beat the city to the draw there, and you'll typically get a little bit of jump on that rush of traffic if you go quick. I also want to mention here, rail and buses are not an available option. During an evacuation, when the city evacuates, they will commandeer the railway and bus transportation vehicles and use them for moving their special needs population. Now, you've put together your plan. For some reason, it didn't work. Johnny was going to ride with Bill to Arkansas, and Bill got scared and left him. And so here's Johnny standing at the campus grounds. Well, we're not going to leave Johnny here. We have this backup plan where any student that has been unable to evacuate on their own, we will put on chartered shuttles and we'll take them to the University of Alabama, where they will still be under Tulane supervision. Our student affairs sends representatives. Our Tulane University Police Department sends representatives. So we're there to safeguard them and chaperone them, but they're going to be sleeping on a hard gym floor at the University of Alabama, and they're going to be eating storm food. So it's just not going to be a pleasant experience. So you don't want to, in fact, you may not use this as your primary source of evacuation. Now, I mentioned to you to fill out the personal storm plan, which lists where your student's going to go, how they're going to go, and some other contact information. We've developed a form to help you do that. If you follow the links you see here on the slide at this time, you're going to see this form. This is an actual screenshot of that form. It's not long. It's not complicated. You're going to look at it and say, wow, that's easy. Why didn't I think of that? Well, sometimes it's not easy to think that, especially if you're living in an area where you don't have to experience hurricanes or severe weather often. So we've gone through and we've put down the things you need to know here. You go through, and once you finish it, you hit the print the plan button, and you've got a copy. Once you hit the submit the plan button, that goes to student housing as well as us. So now you've completed the required mandatory option of completing a student safety plan prior to coming to school. In your personal evacuation plan, prepare a section for hurricanes. When will your students evacuate? Where will they go? What transportation will they use? Auto or airline? I'm kind of being redundant here, but I know a lot of you haven't had to do this before, and it's really important you do it with your student in advance. And then talk to them about how and when they're going to communicate with you. I say this, and then it never fails. If we have an emergency, the first person that you call is me. I can't get a hold of Susie. And check in. Well, it's really going to be a lot easier on your peace of mind if you've drilled it into your students' psyche that they have to communicate with you during a disaster. How are they going to communicate with you if you're out of the country? What if you've gone over to France for a holiday and the storm jumps up? Have all of that stuff worked out so you're not trying to figure it out on the fly. The go bag we talked about, I will not spend a lot of time for you here, but what I've done, this is the go bag which you prepare, and the student just keeps it in their dorm. My daughters have one of these now, and they both still live here in New Orleans. They're out of college, but I make them keep one in their closet in case they have to evacuate. They grab it and throw it in their trunk. You're putting the items in there that you see listed over on the left-hand side, as well as what I have in the body of this. Again, you can go to the link that I've got for you, and it'll give you some more tips. Really make sure that your student knows when they do evacuate not to leave cash, any type of valuables, credit cards, or personal information in those dorm rooms. Even though we lock them and we secure them, we don't know how long you're going to be gone. Returning to school, this is the number one question I get from parents is how long, if you evacuate and close for a hurricane, when will my student be able to come back? I cannot give you a solid answer for that because it really depends on the storm. I'm going to give you a rule of thumb in a minute, but if the storm comes through and moves right through and gets past and it's gone, typically the students will be gone from 5 to 7 school days. And if you think about it, that once we evacuate the school, we've gotten them out 2 days before landfall. So now there's 2 days that they're missing school, that they're at your home. Okay. Now we've got the storm hits on the 3rd day. Let's say it passes right on over, like 90% of them do. We have minor damage. It takes the city a day or so to get the streets cleared and power back up, so that they tell us we can bring our students back. It's up to the city, not us. The city tells us when it's safe to repopulate. Once they do that and we agree that our campus is safe, Then we start bringing back our essential personnel. We've got to get our professors back. We've got to get our staff workers back, the people that support your students when they're here. That takes us another couple of days. So you add all that up, and you're sitting between 5 and 7 days. You back up. We'll advise the students when to report back via the same emergency messaging we use to tell them that they had to evacuate. It'll go out over our mass messaging system, and you'll receive it via the parent notifications that marketing sends out and that the university sends out. So we'll let you know. And again, rule of thumb, 5 to 7 days is what you can count on. Emergency communications, you heard me talk about this. We have a mass notification system we use to let our students know if there's an emergency on campus. That goes directly to them, to their Twitter, to Facebook. Parent alerts, you have to sign up for. The students are automatically enrolled in this system. When they enroll for college and you put down their contact information or they put it down, it automatically populates our emergency system. Obviously, we don't have your information, so if you want to receive parent alerts, the link you see below will take you straight to the form where you can do that. You can also go to our website, Tulane Emergency Preparedness website, and get the same information. Tulane Twitter, a lot of the students like to use Twitter, and here's a hint for you. If you like to use Twitter and you follow us at Tulane Emergency on Twitter, you'll be receiving the same emergency information we're pushing to the student because that goes out real time. You can also like us on Facebook and call the Tulane Alert Line. These are all ways that we communicate with you during a disaster. Updates specifically for parents. Again, this is the site I was speaking of a moment ago. If you go to this site, give us your email address and your name, and the name is optional, but it helps if we have it. Marketing then will take the information I'm pushing to the students. They'll condense it down for you and push it to you if you have signed up through this system here, and the links for this are up above for you. RAVE Guardian, this is something I'm asking you to talk to your students about enrolling or using. It's a free app they can download after they get here. They fill it out. It gives emergency communication straight to our TUPD dispatchers, so that if we have an emergency here, one, our storm information will go out over it, but two, if they have any kind of emergency on campus, they can immediately talk with TUPD by using this RAVE Guardian. Totally free download, great app, and I would really encourage you to ask your student to go to the TUPD website and download this app. Practice is something you really need to do in practice. We're going to be doing that with your students here, but something you need to do with your family plan. And by practicing for a parent and a student, it's just to revisit this information in 2 or 3 months after your student's been here. Maybe if they come home on a break, at some time revisit that, pull up that student safety plan. Your student will be able to get to it from the Gibson link that they filled it out on. Pull it up, revisit it, make sure it's still good and current, but go over those questions with the students so that you're just kind of drilling this into their mind. This is what we're going to do if there is a disaster. I'm kind of near the end of the program here. I would encourage you to communicate back with myself or my team if you have any questions or concerns. I mentioned at the start of the broadcast, our sole function for Tulane University is to provide for a safe environment for your student. But that also means peace of mind for you, the parent. So please reach out. My email is there, norris@tulane.edu, as well as my team's email. Any of the team here would be happy to communicate with you if you need any kind of assistance at all, either now, preparing to come to school, your student come to school, or during the semester. So I want to thank you for allowing me to take up some of your valuable time and let you know that your student has come to a great university. We're going to take care of them, and working with you guys, it'll be a great experience. So thank you, and roll wave.
Thank you, Norris. We appreciate your time and your expertise. Thank you.